Hi, I'm Rocky Kistner, environmental journalist and member of the Oceanites Advisory Board. I'm conducting a series of interviews for Oceanites TV with people working on important issues in Antarctica and climate change. Today, I'm with Grant Ferrier, founder of the Environmental Business Journal, now known as Environmental Business International. Grant is an Oceanites board member and has had a long and distinguished career working with both U.S. and international governmental bodies, as well as private sector clients on important environmental and scientific topics. Thanks, Grant, for joining us on Oceanites TV.
You're welcome, and happy to be here and part of the broader enterprise and this form of educational entertainment. So greetings, Rocky, and to the audience.
Grant, please tell us a little bit about your background and why you started the Environmental Business Journal, now known as Environmental Business International. What services do you provide to your subscribers?
Well, the Business Journal is really a market intelligence service for environmental consulting and engineering and project management companies. So we provide quantitative information on the size of the market, the growth of the market, segmenting the market into types of services, types of contaminants, media, air, water, soil remediation. So we basically sell a subscription publication that does quantitative analysis as well as qualitative analysis. So we do executive interviews for perspective on the environmental industry. And my primary motivation really was both my parents were scientists, and growing up in the 70s, I saw the environmental degradation that we were all grew up in our generation, and was motivated to make a difference. And I believed that science and engineering was going to solve all the problems, but I soon realized that economic policy and business and government policy, economic policy had a larger role in creating a platform for ongoing improvement in environmental problems. So my curiosity stemmed to who is making money solving environmental problems and now climate change problems. In 2008, we launched Climate Change Business Journal to add to Environmental Business Journal in our subscriptions. And here we are today. So we continue to publish strategic business information for the environmental and climate change industries.
So what were the main environmental issues people were dealing with at the time you started the publication, and how have things changed?
Well, in the late 80s, when we started EBJ, as we refer to an Environmental Business Journal, remediation, toxic waste, hazardous waste, this was the era of Times Beach and Love Canal and Superfund. Also, air pollution was a very large issue. So, example, Los Angeles Basin and other areas, had many poor air quality days. We've improved that a lot, actually, and our industry has had contributing to that. And of course, water, wastewater, thousands and thousands of water treatment plants. These are all built, designed, operated by the community that I serve as the editor of the journal, as well as a president of our company, which advises them, advises their investors and owners, as well as convenes meetings so they can network with each other. So we really have a nice, tight community of these environmental solutions providers, science, technology, engineering, and advisory services, all the way up to the C-suite or the board level executives of all global companies and government entities. So it's a very influential industry, really, in how it is affecting change. But part two of your question, have those changed over time? Yes, we still deal with the basic information, basic problems of site remediation, contaminated cleanups, air quality, water quality. But really, the last decade has seen monumental growth in what the energy transition, aspirations for all entities to pursue net zero, no emissions, and then the whole fleet of services around climate adaptation and resilience. So again, a lot of these engineering, science, and technology companies are applying their skills and their energies to preventing or solving climate-related problems, as well as these traditional air, water, and waste and recycling type issues that the industry has been involved with for years and years.
So tell us about the work that you've done with governmental agencies like the EPA and Department of Commerce. What were your main accomplishments over the years?
Well, most of our work for the companies and our subscribers were advising them on business strategy, what new markets may be opening up, and so forth. But the government interest in our work was really, how big is this industry? What is its economic contribution? How many jobs? Is it impacting the environment in a positive way? So it was really not the same kind of work we were doing for the industry itself, but it was really contributing this. It's in the environmental laws and regulations aren't creating costs purely for cost's sake. It's also creating another industry, which is creating employment and ownership and shareholders and wealth for all of those who work and create business. So it was creating a business as well as solving problems, and not just, you know, the negatives. So throughout the history of the environmental movement, there's been this environment versus economy seeming dilemma between which would they choose. But certainly the environmental industry itself is interested in rational environmental policy, as well as supporting the business interest of their companies in their sustainability aspirations and making profit and being able to grow and provide the lifestyles that we've all grown accustomed to.
So when did you first begin to think about climate change? And in your opinion, when did the federal government first take climate change seriously?
Was during the Clinton administration. So the Clinton administration authorized a bill in which it had what was called the Environmental Technology Initiative. It provided funding for research grants through universities, as well as company projects around sort of innovative solutions. And of course, this was the same time that Vice President Al Gore was already talking about climate change. Of course, he got lots of feedback on why he shouldn't deal with that politically. And again, as you know, it's been a fraught political issue. So I certainly became aware of the issues in many ways as a reader and studier of environmental issues and a traveler of the world, as many board members and fellow supporters of Oceanites are.
Grant, where should young people be looking towards in terms of jobs for the future in the environmental arena?
So how can the next generation of young people get involved and get good jobs in the environmental and climate change industry? This is an intriguing topic, and one that's very important to the industries involved, because they need more people. They've got more work than they can handle, and it's a challenge to get all the work done. The demand is so great these days. So for a young person, be inspired. You really need that extra personal motivation to be part of the solution. So science, engineering, technology, economics, management, renewable energy, solar systems, all these things are very important. So you could divide it into clean energy and creating the infrastructure and products around less emissions. So whether it's electric cars, whether it's batteries for electric cars, whether it's reducing the footprint of buildings. There's a lot of work going on in the redesigning and retrofit of buildings. So lots of people are interested in architecture and living spaces. So that's a good one too. And then of course, all the climate science. So how do we monitor and measure carbon balance using satellites, using drones, using other scientific equipment and technology? So things have moved very fast in both the science and technology areas, as well as the climate measuring, whether it's the melting of the polar ice caps, or whether it's concentration of greenhouse gases and carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. All these things are extremely important, and there's a lot of demand and interest from corporations and government to hire people to work on these issues, again, whether we're identifying, measuring, and monitoring, or designing, engineering, and building the solutions all across this supply chain of human talent. There's opportunities for work, for business, and meaningful occupation, and good salaries.
So the environment is a growth industry for young people these days?
Yes, certainly. The environment is very much a growth industry. All the way, again, from science and engineering services, business advisory services, the world's biggest management consulting companies, Bain, McKinsey, Deloitte, they're all hiring climate advisory specialists, many of them with a training in science and technology. So, and all the way down to water and wastewater systems. And so, yeah, there's no shortage of demand for that kind of work.
What future jobs and future innovation and technology might make the biggest difference and impact?
the jobs and technology that will make the biggest impact, in my opinion, are ultimately, we've got to have an economic system that values the atmosphere. So, and what is that? To me, that's a carbon tax. It's been debated across the political spectrum for probably seriously the last 20 years. There's been various cap and trade proposals, but the ability to monetize the negative impact of another ton of carbon emissions and doing that through technology and monitoring systems, satellite, drone, emissions tracking devices, even continuous emission monitors that go in smokestacks all the way to a satellite, can measure the incremental emission of carbon or other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. So I think we have to measure it, and we have to put a price on it to create the incentive for continuous improvement in greenhouse gas balance, or leading to what I was calling climate stability.
So Oceanites founder Ron Levine has come up with a paradigm that relates to adaptation on the part of penguin populations in Antarctica. It covers basically 4 main areas of homes, food, health, and children. What is your thought about that and how important that is?
Yeah, introducing the 4 indicator platforms of home, food, health, and breeding or producing children as a measuring stick for penguin populations on the Antarctic Peninsula is a kind of a novel way to look at it, but I think it's illustrative of something we can expand on to make it more accessible to the younger generations of people looking at climate change. So, and the adaptability, of course, is very important, because that's our early discoveries related to the 3 species of penguins. Gen 2 penguins have been able to adapt in the last 20 years. We have data on that. The chinstrap penguins and the Adelie penguins have been more compromised, and we've actually had fairly dramatic reductions of populations in those 2 species, again, whereas the Gen 2s have adapted. So, and they've adapted their homes. They're more attuned to nesting in different places on the peninsula. They've changed their breeding cycle. In many cases, they will have 2 clutches of eggs a year, as opposed to 1 in the earlier studies from 50, 80 longer ago of the Gen 2 penguin species. And they've modified their diet, their food, and their health based on not just consuming krill. They've also added some fish to their diet. So in this example, the adaptation and the adaptability of the penguin is a good microcosm of what the species of the world can and may do, but it's also indicative of the fact that these very long lasting species, the chinstrap and Adelie penguins, haven't been able to adapt so quickly. So climate change, may create some winners, but it's creating a lot more losers, right? So our study of which of these species can adapt most quickly and how they go about it, I think, again, is indicative of how our research can help broadly across many other ecosystems, and again, serve as a microcosm of climate adaptation, in real time there on the Antarctic Peninsula.
And Oceanites' work is unique?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there are others working on it, and we collaborate with them to aggregate the data in the MAP database and work towards this, global penguin census as a measuring stick of penguin populations broadly. But again, we are focused on areas where we can really aggregate yearly data based on satellite data, drone data, lots of on-the-ground clicking. Ron started the organization with his thumb clicker and visits to many of the same stations. Some of them I visited on my expedition there in 2018, and we hope to visit January 2023. So those out there who think it's time to give it a shot, it's they're every season in December, January, there are voyages going down. So yeah, it's all there, the work to be done. There's more work to do, and it's an important quest for all of us.
In your opinion, what should be the role of government in solving climate change?
What should be the role of government in solving climate change? But I believe the most singular item that could really move the needle long-term and change the game would be a uniform carbon tax or carbon charge that would embed the negative social cost of another increment or another ton of carbon into the atmosphere, or methane, or whatever the particular greenhouse gas is, and charge that to the emitter and the responsible parties, and integrate an economic system to internalize what economists call externalities. So a carbon tax will create incentive to keep reducing and stop paying the carbon tax. And you can start low and make it high. And I think that would move the needle in terms of how all those responsible for emitting greenhouse gases would have a negative economic consequence in this fee or this tax, and therefore there'd be continuous incentive to improve that. We just don't have that now.
What should be the role of the private sector in solving climate change?
The private sector needs to create the solutions. Government can fund research, but the private sector responds to the incentive to profit or to build value of the company that they can sell. So if anything, the last 3 generations and the new generations coming into the market, they want to create the next unicorn. They want to be wealthy. They want to be Elon Musk. They want to be Jeff Bezos. So who will be the Jeff Bezos and Elon Musks of climate solutions or the climate change industry? I think that's what we need. I think that's what we need to see, is these major leaders who create not just technical innovations, but also economic and scientific innovations across the board, and support the government policies to usher this era in of climate stability.
What are states like California and Hawaii doing to solve climate change that the rest of the nation should pay attention to?
From a policy standpoint, California has had a Assembly Bill 32, which for years has collected carbon fees. So just what I was referring to about the carbon tax, we do that at the state level here in California. Hawaii, as an example, also has many progressive issues about renewable energy and a short-term targets on 1, being 100% renewable energy, 2, getting internal combustion or gasoline vehicles off the road. So progressive states like California, Hawaii have examples of a tighter deadline for the transition to electrification of the vehicle infrastructure. And regenerative forestry, regenerative farming, converting the agricultural sector that has a negative carbon impact in many cases into what should be positive. As we all know, plants and trees can be carbon sinks and carbon positive, but many of those in the agricultural productivity zone have a negative impact through their life cycle. So certain local states have certainly instituted their own policies to advance that, and California, Hawaii, Oregon, Washington, even some traditionally red states have some interesting policies. So I think it's quite a era for government policy as well. I think at no time ever has the ears of public policy leaders been open to climate change solutions. And as long as there's an economic awareness of what those costs are, and can they continue to sustain our quality of life while leading towards a pathway to climate stability, then they will be heard and embraced. And there may be an uphill battle, but there's opportunity for that.
So solutions are essential at the state level as well as the national level.
Oh yeah, think global, act local was an early motto of the environmental movement, even in the 70s, right? So yes, we need global policies, but if you don't do it at the local level, I wouldn't say it's meaningless, but I think they have to go hand in hand in terms of individuals and local activism, as well as having an awareness of the global issues we all face and the possible solutions towards making a difference.
In your opinion, where does Oceanites fit into this in terms of the future of the planet?
Where does Oceanites fit into climate solutions and the broader issue of education about climate change, and serving as an example to one species and its plight in a afflicted ecosystem, I think is a very important example that is worth elucidating, is worth promoting, and hence we're having this program and others to make awareness of accelerated climate change on the Antarctic Peninsula and the three penguins that we study at Oceanites. So the role of, again, demonstrating habitat reduction for Antarctic penguins is a microcosm of many ecosystem failures that are being experienced around the world.
So how does counting penguins in Antarctica help solve the climate solution?
How does the penguin counting and how does Oceanites' mission advance this huge global problem of climate change? It's a very intriguing question, Rocky. And one has to reconcile that small local activism, such as advocating for ecosystem health on the Antarctic Peninsula, where our three target species of penguins that we devote most of our studies to there, the Adelie penguin, the Gentoo penguin, and the chinstrap penguin, all are very important to their own species and their community and the scientists that study them. But it's a very interesting measuring stick indicator of the health of the Antarctic Peninsula. And for those who follow climate science, the acceleration of global warming has been much more dramatic at the poles, affecting future polar melting. But our very detailed analysis of penguin populations and their ecosystems and their food supply and the temperature variance in the environments that these penguins live in, again, is an indication of how, I wouldn't say severe and extreme, but how important and vital the problem of climate change is. And if we can promote that as a microcosm and many others that are working on similar work related to other species or other habitats, all of it adds up and we get more support for the ultimate global solutions that we've been talking about here. So I'm very motivated to continue my role as a director of the organization and supporting it in any way, and particularly getting my community of the environmental industry and the climate industry interested in supporting the mission of Oceanites and the overall goal of moving solutions forward around climate change.
Why have you volunteered your money, time, and energy to being on the Oceanites board?
My tie to the organization started with an Antarctic expedition I did in December of 2018. There were penguin experts and actually two partner organizations that still work with Oceanites on the MAP database and some other programs in terms of penguin habitat study. But I quizzed them in a very detailed manner about what I now call the global penguin census. How many penguins are there? And at that point, the species list went up to 19 because the rockhopper penguin was divided into subspecies. So there was even some debate about whether 17 or 19 species of penguins globally. But there was really no clear answer about what is the global penguin population. There was no aggregated meta study of all the different researchers who study all of these 19 penguins, and many of them devote themselves to three like we do, and others do one specific penguin, the little blue penguin or the South African penguin or the Galapagos penguin, or others are subject of research, but the data hadn't been aggregated, and it still hasn't, to be honest. So I was very motivated, and as a quantitative analysis, like we do how big our industries and how big they're growing, so how many penguins there are and how fast are they growing, and are some not growing, and what are the causes of that, was my initial curiosity. And again, I soon realized that that had a tie back to climate change and the passion of our founder, Ron Naveen, for seeing penguin populations on the Antarctic Peninsula as kind of this early stage indicator of some of the real severe and potentially damaging impacts of climate change on these habitats that have evolved over thousands and millions of years, and here we are directly impacting them and then measuring the science and reporting on that. So I continue to support that mission and be very supportive of all the efforts of all of those others who contribute to the same mission as well.
So are you optimistic about the future after your long career in environmental issues?
Am I optimistic about the future? Well, I'm an optimist naturally. So yes, I am optimistic. Am I concerned? Yes, I'm also concerned. Do I see the ability to change? Yes. Do I see the motivation to change? Yes. So do I see the challenge of educating more people to embrace change? Yes. So I'm at the same time optimistic that we can do it, but I'm also realize that many aren't doing anything about it and just want to, sustain their self-indulgent lifestyle that devalues the asset of our planet and our natural infrastructure. So that motivates me, right? So yes, I'm optimistic it can happen, but I'm realistic that we need to do more to make it happen faster.
So adaptation in the Antarctic on the part of penguins is something the rest of us can learn from?
Can we learn from that adaptation? Well, I don't know, Rocky. I don't know if you like krill or if you like raw fish, but you may need to modify your diet a little to have a little more, eat things that have a lower carbon footprint, right? Or things that will survive a higher temperature ecosystem. So yeah, we, again, maybe not direct learning and apply the same thing, but I think the phenomena that we are observing in the Antarctic Peninsula does have applications to many other ecosystems and even human society at some level. So I think it's extremely important.